Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Powerhouse Woman Show. I'm your host, Monica Pierre, and we love this show so much because we have some of the most amazing women on talking about their journey, talking about their lessons learned, and talking about what really sets them apart. What are their unique gifts and talents, and how they put that into the world. I'm a three-time Emmy Award winning journalist. I am a talk show host. I've worked in media many, many moons, as they say, and I love telling people stories. And this show is all about that. Today, we're going to be talking about meeting the moment. And what does that mean? And how does that show up in your life? We're joined by someone who knows an awful lot about that. We're joined by Shelia Higgs Burkhalter. She's a higher education executive, also an author. She is a consultant, and she joins us live from Rock Hill, South Carolina.
Good
Welcome,
afternoon.
Rock Hill.
Hello,
Welcome, welcome,
hello.
welcome. Yes. So again, so if you're joining us, let us know. Say hello. We are live where you're joining us from, and we would love to have you join us. So let's talk about. I want to talk about what you're doing and how you're doing it, but also what is your backstory? How do you show up in the world today based upon what has happened to bring you to this moment?
Yeah, so a little bit of history, as you already talked about, I'm a 30-year higher education executive. So I've been in the profession for 30 years, started right after undergrad. I often let people know that I'm a preacher's kid because I think that is very relevant to the life that I lead on a regular basis. I'm also a first generation college student. And I think all of those things roll into how I approach the things that I do day to day. I am someone who has consistently had to meet the moment. And sometimes I don't always have all the tools or information, but usually there's something within me that compels me to meet the moment. And so it wasn't really difficult for me to come up with this chapter. It wasn't difficult for me to think about what to write because it's been a consistent theme throughout my life. But I would say being first gen and working in the higher education space really is at the center point of many of my stories.
Right, first gen and growing up and seeing what's possible. How would you describe or define meeting the moment? What does that really mean?
Yes, and so the way I define meeting the moment is there are instances that come up typically for many of us in the world of work where we have an opportunity to either move or act or speak on a particular issue or on a particular concern. And meeting the moment means that we step into that, we lean into that, and we do what must be done in the moment, even when we feel a little scared or afraid or frankly terrified, because many of us are terrified to meet the moment, but that's part of meeting the moment. It is pushing past your fears to do what must be done in the moment. And what I talk about in the book chapter is that it often doesn't just happen for many of us. We really have to sort of practice this a little bit because meeting the moment is not for the faint of heart. You really have to be willing to lean in those times when it's really difficult and when people may not be pleased with the things that you say. It could be speaking truth to power. It could be advocating for something that no one else agrees with. It could be taking someone to task in a very polite and professional way, but calling out the thing that needs to be called out. And so meeting the moment can show up in lots of different ways.
And Shelia Higgs Burkhalter is a contributor to the book Brave Women at Work, Lessons in Leadership, and where that's basically what her focus in her chapter is all about. There you go. You did it right. Right on cue. Right on cue. Tell us about the moment that you talk about in the book because it was risky
It was
on
risky.
so many fronts. So tell us a little bit about that.
And the way I kind of start out this chapter is talking about the fact that it was a series of small moments that led to a bigger moment. And really, the bigger moment wasn't one that was anticipated. The smaller moments was really helping to navigate an institution through a series of budget cuts. And there were moments throughout where I had to advocate for a staff or advocate for can we look at some additional options, or there were moments in there where I had to say to someone, I know that you think cutting this entire division is a great life choice. Let's talk about why that probably isn't the best choice. And all of this was happening for me at a time when I was a fairly new vice president and among people who had been in these kind of senior leadership roles for a really long time. The penultimate meeting the moment came when I found myself in a moot courtroom facing 300 people, faculty, staff, and students who were all there eagerly awaiting the information about how would we manage this next series of budget cuts. And as I talk about in the book, we were down to the marrow at that point. So when people talk about being down to the marrow when it comes to budget cuts, it means that we've done all the things that you might anticipate. We've cut the food, we've trimmed the travel budgets, maybe eliminated, we've taken out the marketing, and maybe you've taken away professional development funds. You've done all the things that look like fatty activity, or you've removed all those things that seem like they're negotiable or they're discretionary. So we were really very much lean at that point. And so as people walked into the moot courtroom, they wanted to know where are these additional cuts going to come from? And the long and short of it is, in that moment, I had prepared the people who were doing the bulk of the presentation with the information that they needed to respond to what I knew would be a pretty dramatic moment for everyone. They were going to make a decision to cut a major unit that impacted everyone at the institution. And I knew that would not land well, not with faculty, not with staff, and certainly not with students. And in the moment, I don't know if they didn't read the materials or if they read the materials, but maybe the pressure was too much at that moment. You never know what happened in the moment. But what I know is that I needed to step forward and take the questions. I needed to step forward to calm people's spirits. I needed to step forward to say, while this is a choice that many of us would never have liked to see, the reality is a choice has been made. And now we need to figure out how to continue to provide the services that we need to provide to our students. It was difficult. It was hard. I talk about in the book how I stopped for a quick moment of prayer because, as I said, I'm a preacher's kid and my spirituality goes where I go. And you can drop your head in that moment to center yourself with a quick moment of prayer and then go on and do what needs to be done. It went very well. And I'm thankful as to how well it went, but it was scary. And in hindsight, I can say that it was a vulnerable moment for me. It could have gone very badly. And you're balancing this notion of how do I respect the decision that senior leadership has made? How do I get on board with this? How do I communicate it in a way that I acknowledge that this is concerning and I know that you're worried? And then how do I move us forward to talk about where we're headed next? Yeah. And it was scary, but we did what we needed to do.
Well, let me ask you this, Shelia. So you clearly define and put us right into that. Many of us have been there where we might be new. People see us a certain way. We know it might be hostile territory. People may feel that, the jig is, it's already been decided. This is just a formality and you're wasting my time.
Yes.
And after that moment, how did it inform you going forward and your view of the moment?
Absolutely. So I'd say the entire process informs how I do things now. So it's really important that when a big decision is underway, that you do what you can to gather up as much information and data as you can to make sure that the decision that you're making is in fact a good decision. And make sure that you have a variety of options. So in this instance, they wanted to move in a particular direction immediately. And I said, well, hold on a second. Can we generate some options? And so we put together a committee of people who would be interested in the outcome of this decision. And we came up with a variety of choices. In the end, the choice that I wanted was not the one that was pursued, but that choice still gave us an opportunity to provide a level of service. So I would say to people, make sure that you do your data. Make sure that you're an expert in your area. And make sure that you are fully equipped. So while the people that I'd given the information to were not necessarily equipped in that moment to answer all the questions, I made sure to go ahead and re-review everything I'd put together for them, all those talking points. And then I made sure to have copies of those talking points with me because it became an anchor for me as I stepped into a moment that I never intended to, in order to speak about it. And some of these things you can practice along the way. You can practice being data driven. You can practice speaking up when maybe you have a dissenting opinion, there are ways to do it in a way that others can receive it. And what I always say to people is it's muscle memory. So once you get accustomed to putting yourself out there, then when you feel that compulsion to act, when you feel like I have to move in this moment, you're much more likely to push past your fears because you've developed this way of moving and it becomes a habit. It becomes a muscle memory that you do it.
What's one of the main questions that, I know you have the book, Brave Women at Work, Lessons in Leadership. Your particular chapter is on meeting the moment. And I know as a result of that, people want to hear from you. What kind of questions are coming up for particularly powerhouse women who find themselves facing the moment, sometimes uncertain, and then sometimes even surprising themselves?
Absolutely. Well, often people they're terrified. They're like, I'm too scared to do it. And how do I do it when I'm too scared to do it? And what I say to them is, one of the questions I always ask myself is, if not me, then who? Who else is in the room in this moment? Who else has this seat at the table? Who else has this thought process? And I have to assume that no one else has that thought process and no one else can bring forth the thing that's come to me to bring forth. And so even when my voice is shaking and my hands are shaking, I still do it. So they'll often say, how do I push past my fears? How do I do this when I'm in a first only different and people can make decisions and choices about who I am because there's no one else in the room who looks like me, walks like me, talks like me. And again, I always say to people, you're not in the room alone. You are there representing a chorus of voices and you bring with you. And we've heard Maya Angelou say it. We've heard Oprah Winfrey say it, that when we show up as one, but we come as many. And so when you show up there, when you think about everybody else that you represent, it becomes a little bit easier to push past your fears, to do what must be done. And then when you're an expert at what you do, then you bring in all the data and all the other great information because it's already in you and you just need to deliver it.
You became part of on my radar through another amazing powerhouse woman, Dr. Anika Briscoe, who's also in Brave Women at Work. You talked to me when we were just kind of connecting, and you said that you describe yourself as a super connector.
Yes.
What does that mean, and how does that show up in your very busy life?
Yes. So for me, and you experienced this, like we experienced this together, that when I have an opportunity to meet someone, you and I could have just been very transactional. We could have talked about, how do I get on the Powerhouse Woman show and what does that look like logistically? And that could have been the end of it. But we really spent a lot of time learning about each other. So we realized that we have these commonalities. We come from big families. We have, preachers in our roots. They're just things that
first gen, which was very important, and I think you talked about sharecropping, and I'm the daughter of a sharecropper. I think you're the granddaughter of sharecroppers.
Absolutely. Yes. These are things that if we hadn't taken a moment to really connect, we would never have known. You work at a university. You had a radio show. I have a radio degree. These are things that don't come up in regular conversation. And so I take those things, and once they're in my head, they're there. And then I think about, like at this moment, I've already thought about how many other women are powerhouse women that would be most excellent on Monica Pierre's show. And so I will, when I leave this setting, go into my email and say, let me tell you about Monica Pierre and this fantastic show. And then I will give them a little bit of information about you, and then I will give you a little bit of information about them, and then I'll say, I'll leave you all to connect at this point, because I feel like I've done my work at that point. But it's a sustained kind of thing. So now we have this relationship, and I always want to be in a relationship with Monica Pierre. So when I come to New Orleans in March, I'm finding Monica Pierre, and we're getting together, and we will have a meal and break bread together, because that is a soul connection, and it's deeper than just
It's in my in my phone. I don't want to miss it, so I already put it in my phone, so we can do that. What do you think is the reason people connect with you so much? Because you can think about, you're a higher ed executive, you've done all these things, but there's still that ability to connect with people and have them feel comfortable. What is that about?
That's a really great question. I really think it is. I'd have to say it's something I got from my mother. Never met a stranger, ever. She never met a stranger. She was a first lady. She was a councilwoman. She had worked in a factory. She was a Head Start teacher. But she would talk to you and communicate with you as if you were the most important person in the room. And she would ask you how you were doing, and she would stay there to listen to the response. When she invited you into our home, then you were family to her. And so I think I try to recreate that energy, and it's not in a contrived kind of way. It just kind of happens automatically. I look you in your eye, I
Yes.
get curious about who you are, and then I spend some time with you. And I think people feel that genuine warmth, and they want to be a part of that.
Right. And as you were speaking, Sheila, I started thinking about my father. To the day he died, he did not know how to read nor write. The smartest person I ever met. And he always was caring and shared. If he had a half a slice of bread, you had the half of the half. That's the
Absolutely.
kind of person. And when he died, not only did the entire town, and I'm from the South, so there's some sections of towns where people don't meet, but the entire town turned out. My
Yes,
siblings, friends from other states turned
yes,
around there, and everybody was saying, "Well, he was my best friend." I said, "Well, how many best friends does my daddy have?"
yes.
Yeah, that's exactly. So that resonates. So you are indeed a super connector. You're an author, you're a higher ed executive, you have your own consulting firm as well. How can people just tap into your brilliance and get to know you and get to connect with you?
Absolutely. So Shigsby Coaching, my website is the easiest way to find me. And on that website, if you click around, there are places where you can click to have a free consultation or to provide me with additional information so that I can get in touch with you. And typically, if you click on one of those links, it takes you directly to my calendar and you can schedule. And then a Zoom link comes to you. And because it's on my calendar, I show up and we have a brilliant connection. And then we figure out how I can serve you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the Powerhouse Woman Show. I look forward to other connections as a result of it. I look forward to seeing you next year in New Orleans, and we'll be breaking bread and laughing and sharing more things about ourselves. So thank you for being with us.
Of course. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yes, hold on just a second. And I want to thank you all for watching. I love this show. As you can tell, we're in our fifth season. And if there is another powerhouse woman, maybe yourself, who would like to be on the show, we can have a conversation and we can figure out if it's a great fit. Just go to Monica at thepowerhousewomanshow.com and we'll do it and we'll figure out what goes on. So thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next week on the Powerhouse Woman Show.